So we are live and we are streaming. So as soon as you're ready to go, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Then call the meeting to order. And before we begin our meeting, I will have an opening remarks. I just want to welcome everyone to this hybrid in-person and virtual meeting for the Committee of Adjustment from the Township of Central Frontenac. Just so that everyone is aware, members of the public may join in person or virtually. For those of you who may be new to the Committee of Adjustment, my name is Bill McDonald and I'm the chair of the committee. We also have Francis Smith, Victor Hayes, Brent Cameron.
Good morning, good afternoon.
He's not here, he's the virtual one. And Sherry Wan.
Hello.
And I guess and Cindy Deachman, our deputy clerk, will be assisting us as the meeting host. We're also being joined by planning staff. The format of the meeting will follow the agenda posted online, which can be found on the township's website. Staff have also prepared a presentation for everyone to follow along with during the meeting. This will be shown on the screen. For each application with a public hearing, we will follow this format. As of chair, I will introduce the file so that everyone knows where we're at on the agenda. The planner will provide an overview of the application. We will then ask if there are any comments from the applicant or their agents. Committee members will then ask staff and the applicant or their agent questions if there are any. The public will then have an opportunity to ask questions. I encourage you to ask any question that you feel comfortable with the new process. The committee will then deliberate and vote on the application. Voting will take place with the members of the committee raising their hands. I will then state whether the vote was carried. All members of the public will have an opportunity to provide comments on new applications. If a person or public body does not make an oral submission at the meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Frontenac, Central Frontenac, before a decision is made, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. Township staff will be in touch following the meeting and will forward a copy of the decision within 15 days to the applicant and anyone who is requested to be notified. Should you have any questions after the meeting, we encourage you to reach out to staff. The applicant, the minister, or any other person or public body who has an interest in the matter may, within 20 days of making the decision or date of notice of appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal against the decision of the committee by filing with the Secretary Treasurer a notice of appeal. I will now ask Cindy to provide an overview of how members attending virtually can participate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When the meeting is open to the public, the chair will ask the members of the public if they have any questions or comments. Members of the public will be asked, for those joining virtually, to use the raise hand feature at the bottom of the Zoom screen. This will alert the chair that you would like to speak. Staff will notify the chair if someone would like to speak and then will unmute your microphone. As a member of the public, you will receive a notification that your microphone has been unmuted. Please wait a second after unmuting your microphone before speaking. If there's anyone here in person, then they can just do it the old-fashioned way. If you are calling in by telephone, you use the *9 when you would like to raise your hand during the meeting. You will hear a prompt on the phone and that you have raised your hand, and you'll be notified when your microphone is unmuted. We will need you to state your name because just the phone number shows up on our end. This afternoon, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 7 people joining us virtually.
In the unlikely account that we have connection issues, the meeting cannot be restored within 15 minutes. The meeting will be postponed and staff will be in touch with each applicant. A notice will also be posted on the township's social media letting you know. So with that, I will begin the meeting here. I have a motion moved by Sherry Wan and seconded by Victor Hayes that the agenda be adopted as. Were there any late additions to the agenda? As presented. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest by any member of the panel on any item listed on tonight's agenda? The minutes will indicate no disclosures. I have a motion moved by Victor and second by Sherry that the minutes of June 9th, 2022 be adopted as. Were there any errors, omissions as noted by anyone on the minutes? As presented. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion's carried. First item on tonight's agenda is B0822 Jaeger.
Do you want to come up, Mark?
Jenny, you will be addressing these. Are we doing both the A and B at the same time?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Thank you. So this is a pair of applications that are returning from the previous meeting. They were deferred at that time pending comments from conservation and septic to ensure that we could service the lots appropriately. There's proposal for 2 parcels, same size and frontage, approximately 90 meters of frontage on Cronk Road, and 1.2 hectares or just under 3 acres in area. The retained parcel will be about 6.6 hectares or just over 16 acres in area. The property is designated rural and zoned rural, and no changes to the zoning are recommended as a result of this application. There were some wetlands identified on the property, which is why comments from conservation and septic were especially important for this. On this next slide up here, you can see you've got severed parcel A and B in the corner there. Comments from South Frontenac, the Septic Approval Authority, indicated no objections to the severances as submitted. Rideau Valley Conservation Authority commented also. Comments dated June 3rd, 2022 indicate no objections as submitted either. They noted that on severed parcel A, the one in the corner, there was a pond close to Cronk Road on the north side of the property and some small wetlands associated with that pond. There were no map flood hazards, steep slopes, organic soils, or any other concerns noted on the property. And Conservation Authority has no objection to this application as submitted. There were some questions previously with regards to entrance locations. Public Works has visited the property more than once and noted that there are suitable locations for entrances that respect both wetland setbacks and safety sightlines for the entrances. There were no public comments received with regards to this application. Recommended conditions, should the committee approve these applications, are that each lot is surveyed. Survey of the road widening, most specifically with regards to the road where Cronk Road bisects severed parcel A in the, I'm going to say top right on the picture because I'm going to get northeast, southwest wrong, where it crosses in the corner of it. Surveyed to a minimum of 20 meters wide, 10 meters on either side of the center line of the traveled portion, and have that transferred to the township as a condition of approval. Parkland fee is a standard condition of up to 5%. Pay any outstanding taxes on the severed parcel, and all these recommended conditions are to be completed within a period of 2 years. Planning staff are recommending that the Committee of Adjustment approves these applications as submitted, subject to the conditions in the planning report.
Thank you, Jenny. Are there any comments from the applicant on regard to these, or their agent? I guess you're the applicant, right? You don't have an agent here.
No.
No. Okay. Any questions or comment?
No, I read over everything pretty thoroughly.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, do you have any questions in regard to this application? Are there any questions from the public, Jenny, in regard to these applications?
If there is anyone from the public who wishes to speak, you can use the raise hand feature now. I see no one, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And I will read the motion. I have a motion moved by Sherry and seconded by Victor that consent application B0822 Hinchinbrook Jaeger Sullivan for the property located at part lot 25 concession 7 in the geographic township of Hinchinbrook for a 1.2 hectare 2.97 acre parcel as a new lot be approved subject to conditions noted in the Planning Act. That the Secretary Treasurer shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, including providing the notice of decision to the applicant, any person or public body that made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed and that all conditions outlined in the notice of decision shall be completed and the certificate of official issued within a period of 2 years after the notice of decision was issued as required by the Planning Act. Any further discussion or comments? All in favor of the motion? This motion is carried. And I might as well just go ahead and read the second one. I have a motion moved by Smith, Francis, second by Sherry, that consent application B0922 Inchbrook Jaeger Sullivan for the property located at part lot 25, concession 7 in the geographic township of Inchbrook for 1.2 hectare, 2.97 acre parcel as a new lot be approved subject to conditions noted in the Planning Act. That the Secretary Treasurer shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, including providing a notice of decision to the applicant, any person or public body that made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed, and that all conditions outlined in the notice of decision should be completed and the certificate of official issued within a period of 2 years after the notice of decision was issued as required by the Planning Act. Any further discussion on this application? All in favor of the motion? This motion is carried. Any instructions to the applicant?
I'll just mail you the stuff out.
Thank you for attending.
You don't have to stay. Yeah, you don't have to stay.
Okay, the next item on tonight's agenda to be discussed is A1022 McKellar, minor variance. Jenny, you on for this one?
That is correct. There we go. This is another application that is returning as a result of some questions and concerns raised during the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority site visit during the previous review. So this is a application for permission and minor variance. The proposal includes to reconstruct and enlarge the existing decks to connect to one another. So there is an existing deck in this location and in this location here on the side and water side of the cottage. The proposal is to extend these decks at the same width as they are concurrent or currently, and connect them to each other and relocate the stairs from the one side of the cottage to the opposite side of the cottage. None of these extensions to the decks will get any closer to the lake than any of the existing development. So no further water body setback. Additionally to this proposal is the legalization of a sleep cabin, which was constructed in 2021 at approximately 13.1 meters from the high water mark. The applicants were under the impression they did not need additional planning approvals or building permits, as the sleep cabin has a footprint of less than 10 square meters and is under the minimum required size for a building to require a building permit in the Ontario Building Code. However, it was noted once the site visit was conducted that despite the requirement for Ontario Building Code permits, planning approvals and zoning setbacks did have to be followed. As a result, this application was deferred for decision at the last meeting until these concerns could be addressed. Subsequent to that, planning staff and conservation staff went out for site visits to discuss the options available. On this next slide is the revised site plan that shows both the existing decks in the red outlines, the proposed decks in the blue hatch, and the sleep cabin, which was constructed in this green box here, approximately 13.1 meters from the high water mark of Long Lake, as I noted. So the initial comments in June from our VCA did request deferral until all of these concerns could be addressed. The revised comments dated the 10th of July, 2022, indicated no concerns to the application as revised. Comments from conservation noted that the property owner should be commended for their open-minded approach and interest in environmental protection methods when it came to renaturalization and other approaches within their property. Part of the compromise that the applicants worked on with Rideau Valley Conservation Authority was that the viewing platform located along the shoreline be removed And the existing dock realigned, so it extended more perpendicular to the shoreline for a lesser shoreline impact. On this next slide, the picture on the left is the view of the sleep cabin from Long Lake. As you can see, a large portion of the shoreline is naturally vegetated. The sleep cabin is well screened. In fact, you can just about see the top bit of it here. But other than that, you'd be hard pressed to notice it even from the lake. The picture on the right is the view of the existing cottage, again from the lake. The wood deck in the front here is the viewing platform that's going to be removed, and the applicants are working with Rideau Valley Conservation Authority to do some replanting and vegetation renaturalization in this area. The dock here will be realigned to limit the impact on the shoreline. This next shot is a view of the sleep cabin that was constructed. It was built in an area under many pine trees, so the amount of existing vegetation on the ground there would have been, I don't want to say none, but little to none, as often under pine trees. It just, you got pine needles, and that's about all that was under these. You can see the natural shoreline that does slope down to the water here. There were no concerns with setback to top of slope or any slope stability concerns for this property. The next slide here on the left, you can see that is the, I guess, the front or the lake view of the existing cottage with the deck. This is the deck that they're proposing to expand to the end of the cottage and locate the stairs on this opposite side from where they are currently. On the left or the right-hand side, this is the small deck and stairs that are currently used to access the lower level and the area in front of the cottage. This is proposed to expand out to meet up with this at the same width as the ones on the side. As noted, there's no further water body encroachment than anything that's existing, and really they're just trying to make it a little bit more functional and easy to access from both sides as well as the inside, and relocate the stairs to one location so that they're limiting the amount of ways and impact on the vegetation in that area pretty much. Conditions recommended for approval, should the committee choose to, are this: the permission is for the increase in the deck area only. The minor variance is approved for the sleep cabin in its current location. Any approvals granted only apply to this application. No future construction would be subject to these. Any construction should result in no increase in runoff. Any roof leaders or downspouts go away from the lake into a leaching pit or some other sort of infiltration, such as a rain garden was another alternative suggestion from Rideau Valley. All construction material must be disposed of more than 30 meters from the lake, and erosion and sediment control measures put in place during construction and remain until the shoreline is appropriately revegetated. Building permits are needed for all construction and demolition, including the already placed sleep cabin on the property. Planning staff are recommending the Committee of Adjustment approves this application per the revised application, including the removal of the wood deck at the shoreline in consultation with our BCA and the conditions noted in the planning report.
Thank you, Jenny. Now, do we have any applicant here or any comments from the applicant or agent?
We do have the applicant. She's raised her hand. I'll move her over.
Hi there, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. I just wanted to hop on to say thank you to Jenny and to Sarah and to Crystal for all their help and for the conversation and the opportunity to have the dialogue for this. I think we're just really grateful for it, and you know, our cottage means a lot to us, and we're really excited to be able to hopefully, you know, continue to encourage you know, the time we spend there and be able to add to the environment on it, and are really excited actually for the revegetation plan in particular. So I wanted to hop on to say thank you. I'm really grateful for the time they've spent with us going through this process.
Thank you. Committee members, do you have any questions about the item? Go ahead, Victor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have some questions about condition number 5, which is about the roof leaders. Now, typically, if this is not a new construction of a structure, we don't ask for roof leaders. So, but it is in the conditions here. Are we asking them to put leaders onto the house or the cabin? And secondarily, the photograph of the bunkie, it looked like there were no eaves troughs at all. Are we going to ask them to put some on and have the leaders to the back of the cabin?
We're not requesting any addition of leaders or anything specifically. It was more trying to come up with a standard condition that address that there's no increased runoff and thing. And as such, in the case where they are part of the construction, that they are to be directed away. I do know that there are none on the sleep cabin right now. However, I was not sure if they would be required as part of the building permit construction. Some of the bunkies have them, some of them don't. And I felt it was appropriate to include it as a recommendation. That way, if they are included as part of the construction, we've covered off.
So just sort of a follow-up. I think historically, we don't ask them to put new leaders on existing structures if they're not modifying them. So I'd be fine with not asking for them on the original structure, the existing structure, but the bunkie, in a sense, is a new construct. And so if we could put one of the conditions that they put eaves troughs on and down behind the bunkie, and then I'd be satisfied with this application.
Okay, did you make that a point of the agreement? So it's on here already?
No, you're gonna write it on your side.
Yes, I can say if the committee wishes to
gonna
amend
write
the
it while
conditions
I-
to include that recommendation, I think that seems reasonable.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Now, Cindy, is there, public have any questions in regard to this application?
If there's anyone from the public wishing to speak, please use the raise hand feature. I see no one, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Then I will read this motion as soon as the writing is done, and we will vote on the issue. Thank you. I have a motion moved by Smith, second by Hayes, that minor variance and permission application B1022 McKellar for the property located in Part Lot 2, Concession 3 in the geographic township of Olden to reduce the water body setbacks. The permission is granted through the application A1022 for the expansion of an existing legal non-conforming structure through the reconstruction and enlargement of existing uncovered and unclosed decks. The total enlarged, uncovered, and unenclosed deck shall be a maximum of 37.2 square meters, 400 square feet, in an area with a minimum water body setback of 10.7 meters, 35 feet. That minor variance approved through this application A1022 is only for a reduction in the required front yard and water body setback for an accessory sleeping cabin to a minimum of 13.1 meter, 43 feet be approved, subject to the conditions noted in the planning report. And number 5, condition bunkie adds eaves troughing not on existing cottage. The Secretary Treasurer shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, including the providing a notice of decision to the applicant, any person or public body that made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed. Any further discussion on this application? All in favor of the motion? This motion is carried. Okay, the next item on our agenda would be B1222 Kennebec, 2693917 Ontario limit, creation of new lots.
Is that one you use? Do you want to sit up here?
And Jenny, you're going to speak to this first. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As noted, this is 2 new applications for consideration for the creation of 2 new lots. Severed parcel A will be about 3.84 hectares or just under 10 acres in area. It will have frontage on both Baker Valley Road and Airport Way, both of which far exceed the minimum requirements for new lot creation in the rural zone. Severed parcel B will also have frontage on Airport Way and frontage on Turner Way, and will be about 1.1 hectares or just under 3 acres in area. These are both designated rural and zoned rural. The retained lands do have an area of environmental protection zoning on them due to a provincially significant wetland, which is part of the Kennebec Wetland Complex. The retained lands will be just about 18.5 hectares in area, around 45 acres. And the roads that it has frontage on and bisected by are Baker Valley Road, Airport Way, Turner Way, and Lakeshore Road. Additional note is that severed parcel B, the smaller of the two proposed lots, does have the airstrip known as the Baker Valley Aerodrome running through the northern portion of this property. Severed parcel A does not have any of the provincially significant wetland within it. However, it is within 120 meters of the boundary of the provincially significant wetland. And some additional smaller unevaluated wetlands are identified on this parcel as part of the environmental impact study submitted. Here on the next slide, you can see this is the severance sketch that was submitted with the application. So the larger of the two parcels, lot 1 is located up here, and they note the two unevaluated wetlands that were identified on the property. This area up here on the north side of Baker Valley Road is the provincially significant wetland that is closest to this severed parcel. Again, it's within the 120-meter buffer, but is not located within the provincially significant wetland itself. Severed parcel 2 is smaller at the southern side of Airport Way. It is got some of the airstrip here, as you can see. It's also subject to some rights of way for access to waterfront properties with frontage on the lake. On this next slide is the survey that was submitted again as part of the application that identifies the different parts that will make up each of the proposed lots. So part 7, which is approximately outlined in red here, will make up the first severed parcel, the larger of the two. And the smaller of the two actually is made up of a number of parts. It's parts 10 through 16, 15, 16. Sorry, there's a lot of little parts with the airstrip and different things in there. I would like to note there was some concerns with regards to rights of way over part 13 on this survey, which was identified as part 16 on a previous survey. And that is part of the right of way for access to these 3 lots here via an ABC numbering from Airport Way. The creation of this lot will not impact any existing deeded access or rights of way to the properties along the waterfront. This is just another view as it's there's a lot going on in this area. This is an air photo just overlaid roughly with some outlines to show the larger of the two parcels, mainly wooded, and some of unidentified wetlands and a couple of the areas in proximity to Airport Way with the PSW on the north side of Baker Valley Road. You can see on the smaller of the two parcels where the airstrip bisects the property. This is identified by some of the parts on the survey, I believe 10, 11, 12. And then 13 runs along here that serves as access to this. There was a wooded area identified here, but there's still sufficient area within this parcel outside of all of these current restrictions for a building envelope and on-site services. So these applications were circulated for review of septic suitability. Comments from South Frontenac indicated no objections to either of the proposed lots and noted that the sites are flexible for siting the sewage systems. As is common, additional granular soil may need to be imported, but those will be dealt with at the time of the building permit application. Again, these were circulated for review to Quinte Conservation Authority. Comments dated June 28th, 2022 indicated no objections as submitted to either lot. They did note the proximity of the subject property and proposed severance B12 to the Kennebec Lake provincially significant wetland. Upon closer inspection, these comments did note that no EIS was submitted with the application. However, planning staff would like to note that is not correct. There was both an environmental impact assessment done, quite an extensively detailed one with many recommendations, as well as a planning justification report prepared by Boulevard Group. And it appears that when this package was forwarded on to Quinty for review, for some reason, the EIS was not attached to the email. I'm not sure why. They didn't request anything. They didn't have any concerns. So in order to make sure that all of environmental concerns and things are covered off, this has been forwarded on to Quinty, and we would like to have their biologists and environmental staff do a proper review, as they're the qualified ones to do the peer review of that EIS. Their comments did also note it, the potential for species at risk and significant wildlife habitat on the severed parcels, but also, again, that they had no objections to either of the proposed lots, even in the absence of the EIS. There were several public inquiries received with regards to continuation of access to the waterfront lots accessed by Airport Way. And that was the properties I noted that were part 13 on the submitted survey, part 16 on the previous surveys. And planning staff did confirm with those inquiries that any legal deeded access that's in place will not be affected by this. They are continue to have the same access they've always had to their properties. Other comments and questions included, were there any restrictions in building on the subject property, the smaller of the two that are proposed, in proximity to the airstrip? Planning staff don't have any, or no, sorry, the zoning bylaw doesn't have any specific restrictions to that. That was noted to them. Again, other comments included an observed species at risk on Gregory Way, which is just on the opposite side of Airport Way, so within proximity to this severance, and photographs of a Blandings turtle, and questions on environmental impacts due to proximity to that PSW. Planning staff are recommending at this time that the Committee of Adjustment hears any further comments from the public and defer this application for decision until the EIS can be reviewed and all comments addressed appropriately with regards to the outstanding concerns, especially species at risk and other things with the PSW.
Thank you, Jenny. The agent have any comments, or the applicant have any comments at this time?
I can answer any questions. Do I press a button here?
Yep.
There we go. I'm here to answer any questions that people may have. I think you've already responded to the questions from the public, which really, I mean, we know there's no impact on access when you do a severance. And the EIS already had addressed the turtle issues. Part of what a couple of points that maybe Quinty Conservation was at the property 2 years ago. We kind of got stalled with the whole COVID thing, and but they did come out and they have been to the property, so they already know that. And the elevations aren't showing on here, which the larger parcel is like 15 meters higher than the road and probably about 20 meters higher than the significant provincial wetland. So, you know, that also diminishes the impact. Turtles don't like to climb very much. So, and the soil up there is not conducive to nests. It's more of a loamy soil as opposed to sandy soil. And the EIS noted that neither parcel showed any nesting. So minimal impact there. So I'm just here to answer any other questions that you might have to understand. It's an interesting and complex property, a little unique for your neck of the woods.
Committee members, do you have any questions of the applicant? Go ahead.
The question that I would have is the airport gone? The airport strip?
No, the strip
So it's
still remains.
Is it still active?
Yeah, it's being used regularly. I
Okay.
fly on there all the time.
Okay. I just wasn't sure.
Go ahead, Victor.
That was also my question, was, is it an active airport? And does that have any impact on the planning? I'm assuming that you've done your homework and you realize no.
I'm sorry, I missed the first half of that question.
Oh, sorry, it's about the airport.
Yes.
And airports are regulated federally. And I was just wondering whether there's any impact on a municipal planning report about.
So if it was a federally regulated airport, there would be additional requirements in zoning setbacks. As this is a private aerodrome, I looked into it. It is not regulated under the Aeronautics Act. So any setbacks and additional requirements are up to the discretion of the municipality in which it's located. And the zoning bylaw has no specific setbacks or requirements with regards to airstrips at all. I looked extensively through that, see if there's any concerns or considerations. Realistically, I mean, from a planning point of view, don't impede sightlines, don't put up something tall, don't shine a spotlight at from your backyard. I mean, if it was something that perhaps council wanted to do, then maybe that could be a recommendation for including in the zoning bylaw review that's going on currently.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask about the deferral because of the EIS. Do we review that as well, and we're waiting for comments from Quinty, or is it Quinty that are looking at it and we're?
So I did do a detailed read through of both the planning justification report, the EIS, and made several comments. From my perspective, it looks like they've covered everything off. However, I don't have the qualifications to do the peer review formally. So that is where we rely on the conservation authorities. Anytime we have an EIS, to have them go through and make sure the appropriate acts, studies, things have been looked at. I mean, as I said, from a sort of a more public perspective, they referenced all sorts of interesting things and it looked like they got the right parts, but I'm just not qualified to know that if it was properly done or not. And that's where we have the conservation review.
I guess I was thinking if we think Quinty's going to be fine with it, would we be further ahead to make it a condition of the approval that Quinty sign off on the EIS?
I mean, I suppose that's an option. I think it would make more sense to wait in case there were some concerns or questions raised that were unexpected. But I mean, that is always an option of the committee if you wanted to look at doing something like that.
That would be my request, that to make it a condition, because this was an unfortunate staff error. I mean, this process has been delayed because of COVID and many other things, but and the fact that Quinty already responded not having the EIS in a positive means, you know, that's the reason we did the report in advance, so there would be no questions. Be inclined to approve the application with the condition that Quinty sign off on the.
In other words, we're not deferring it. We're going to approve it with conditions.
Yeah. We do have a phone number, so I'm going to move you over. And if you can just identify with your names, we don't have that information. Go ahead.
Hi there, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Okay, it's Janice Antrim. We have a cottage at 1084C Airport Way. And I don't even know if this question is relevant or not, but for the larger property, because of the elevation, if the lot is severed and something is built there, a structure, a cottage, a tiny house, I don't know, could there or would there be an issue with runoff down to the south part of the runway and into the properties south of that larger lot? Is that an issue at this point?
Jenny, can you comment on it, or Dimitri?
I say rights of way are just, like you said, there, anything that's existing isn't a concern, unless I've misunderstood the question. Sorry. Yep.
Sorry, I'm just more concerned with if anything is being built, if a structure is built because of the slope of the land from that north higher elevation, anything running down, do we need to be concerned about that? I'm sure everything when it's built would be built to code, et cetera, but is there any environmental concern running across Airport Way and down into Airport Way?
Janice, it's Sean Marshall. With regards to runoff, you have such a large land mass there that, you know, a building doesn't change the post-development flow from the pre-development flow. And there's already some natural features there to deal with runoff that would be unchanged. Part of the application of a building permit is a site plan where you deal with water flow from a structure.
Okay, that's fine. That's just a.
Anyone else, Cindy?
Yes, we do. I'm going to move over Laura Bissett.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Laura Bissett. I'm here on my own behalf and on behalf of my parents. Our family owns a property on Gregory Way, which is just to the east of the subject properties. I submitted the pictures of the Blandings turtle, which I took on the evening of June 11th. She was nesting, laying eggs on the side of Gregory Way. The province of Ontario has adopted a recovery strategy for the Blandings turtle. It is a provincially threatened species and a federally endangered species. The EIS submitted does not address Blandings turtles at all. I reviewed it in detail, all 80 pages, and it doesn't address the recovery strategy either. The recovery strategy would suggest that at occupied locations, which this would be, critical habitat is defined as the permanent and seasonal wetlands along the surrounding suitable terrestrial habitat within 240 meters from the wetlands. And that includes upland forests. And so, I mean, I'm not a biologist, I'm a planning lawyer for a municipality, but it would seem to me that if there are turtles occupying the Kennebec complex wetland who need to get upland to do their nesting and mating activities, this is probably a fairly attractive environment for them. And so I also want to point you to policies 2.1.7 and 2.1.8 of the provincial policy statement. Your decision today must be consistent with those policies. 2.1.7 provides that development and site alteration shall not be permitted in the habitat of endangered species and threatened species, except in accordance with provincial and federal requirements. And policy 2.1.8 says development and site alteration shall not be permitted on adjacent lands to the natural heritage features and areas identified, unless the ecological function on the adjacent lands has been evaluated. These are important words, has been evaluated, and it has been demonstrated that there will be no negative impact on the natural features or their ecological functions. And so my suggestion to you, just in response to one of the members' comments that it would be okay to approve these consent applications subject to sign off from Quinte Conservation, that decision would not be consistent with these policies. You have to have been satisfied that it's demonstrated that these consents will not impact the ecological function of the Kennebec PSW complex, and that there won't be site alteration or development in the habitat of a threatened species. And so I'm asking that you accept the staff recommendation that these consent applications be deferred until Quinte Conservation has had an opportunity to review the EIS with the knowledge that there are Blandings turtles in the area. And I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with iNaturalist, which is a website operated by the MNR where you can report endangered and threatened species observations. If you were to go to that website and look in this area, you would see that there are numerous observations of Blandings turtles. So mine was not the only one. And so I just ask that you take that into consideration in making your decision today. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Anyone else, Cindy?
I'm going to move over Teresa Gannon.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I just wanted to go back to the airstrip question. I also was curious to know how there was room to build anything next to the airstrip. I had requested a document actually on aerodrome standards and recommended practices from Transport Canada, and it does discuss safety zones. There's requirements from the center of a landing strip. I don't know if it's required, but it's certainly recommended. I don't know, was that considered when considering the size of the building envelope and this severance?
Jenny, or
Thank you. I'm going to say, we did look at the lot area in the development area, and there are smaller lots that also have part of the airstrip in them that are fully developed and have no impact on the operation of the airstrip. There appears to be more than sufficient area for construction that respects the sort of the existing general setback. If you look on the air photos, you can see there's a cleared area on either side of the airstrip. And even if you use that as the setback from the airstrip, there still is sufficient area within that property to meet the zoning setbacks as well as all the other requirements for development, including site servicing in such a way that it shouldn't negatively impact any of the properties immediately surrounding it.
anyone else?
I'm going to move over the phone number again. The hand's still up and I'm just not sure if that's a result from the previous one or if there was an additional question. So perhaps you could just confirm whether you had any additional comments.
Sorry, no, I'm fine. Thank you. It's Janice Antrim.
Okay, thank you. And sorry, I missed taking your hand down. Thanks. So there does not appear to be anyone else wishing to speak. If there is, please use the raise hand feature. I see no one, Mr. Chair.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to respond to some of Laura's comments. Although there were several turtle species that were identified in the EIS. And, obviously in 56 acres, they're not going to walk every inch, but there was no significant habitat found up on the large parcel or on the runway lot proposed. And in fact, the photo is where we're finding the problem for turtles is roadways, because up here we use sand, and guess where turtles like to go is to the sand. So their migration up would not be, it'd be along the roadway. It wouldn't be, they wouldn't climb 15 meters and to drop down 10 meters or 20 meters to get to the wetland. So that's why the conclusion of the EIS was there would be no significant impact on any significant habitat. And roadways are excluded from significant habitat as well under provincial policy.
Okay, thank you. Panel, do you have any further questions in regard to the application? Go ahead.
Just a comment when we talked about approving this and waiting to see what the study showed. I believe given the statements, we need to wait until the study comes back to check on about these turtles.
Yep.
So I would be in favor of deferring.
Yep.
We meet again in August, early August 11th. So it is a bit of a delay, but I think we're wise to do that.
Okay, all right, then I will, if there are no further comments from the panel, I will read the motion, and then at time frame, we'll just have to see how quickly Quinty gets back to us with the report in regard to this application. I have a motion moved by Smith, second by Sherry Wan. The consent application B1222 Kennebec 2693917 trail limit for the property located in Part Lot 20 Concession 9 in the geographic township of Kennebec for a 3.84 hectare, 9.49 acre parcels new lot be deferred until the Quinte Conservation Authority has time to review and submit an environmental impact study. Any further discussion on the motion? Those in favor of the motion? Against, if any? Motion is carried. And I will have a motion moved by Sherry Wan, second Victor Hayes, a consent application B1322 Kennebec 2693917 Ontario Limited for the property located in Part Lot 20 Concession 9 in the geographic township of Kennebec for a 3.84 hectare 9.49 acre parcel as a new lot be deferred until Quinte Conservation Authority has had time to review and submit the environmental impact study. Further discussion? Oh, question?
When that study comes back, the applicant will get a copy of it right away?
The EIS was prepared and submitted by the applicant. It's just, it hasn't been peer reviewed by Quinte Conservation.
But once they're
they're
comments,
They should email.
Yes, I can say my understanding is that Quinte, when they send their comments back, they send it to both township planning staff and the applicants.
okay.
Go ahead, Philip.
Would we expect Quincy will have it back in time to come to the next meeting?
I would like to hope so, but I make no promises,
Busy
unfortunately, because they are outside.
I have a phone call in and they actually did call.
Like I say, we have reached out to them, and they have got back to us with hopefully a timeline. We haven't heard a firm decision from them, but they are aware of this and that this is coming, and we would like to have it done sooner rather than later.
Can we ask how long they've had it already?
Probably a little bit over a week. It was my fault. I didn't send it when I sent the application. Didn't really think about it until later.
I think we should very strongly suggest that Quinte get it back to us prior to the 11th of August. I think this gentleman has waited long enough, and it was our error, and I think we need to try and compensate for that.
Yes, we will do our best to strongly encourage them. There's unfortunately only so much encouragement I can do, but yes, we're definitely working with them actively at this point to try and get this done as soon as possible.
If we have a member on Quinte, we could maybe have her intervene as well.
The situation we have right now is we have a motion before us to defer this for at least 1 month for the reasons already expressed. So any further discussion on the motion ahead of us or before us? All in favor of the motion then? Motion's carried. And we'll be in touch. Next item on for discussion tonight is B 1422 Hunter, creation of a new lot. And Dimitri, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. For everybody in attendance today, my name is Dimitri and I'm one of the planners here at the County of Frontenac. So consent application B 1422 proposes to sever a 0.8 hectare or 2 acre parcel from an existing 1.48 hectare or 3.67 acre lot of record located at Part Lot 28, Concession 6 in the geographic township of Kennebec, municipally known as 2548B Henderson Road. The lot that's proposed to be severed will have approximately 200 meters or 656 feet of frontage along Henderson Road, while the retained will be left with approximately 70 meters or 252 feet of frontage. Both the proposed severed lots, the proposed severed and retained lots are designated and zoned as rural in the township zone official plan and the zoning bylaw. The lot that's proposed to be created is vacant with residential development anticipated, and the retained parcel supports the storage of 3 recreational vehicles and developed with a privy or an outhouse. The application was circulated to the Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority as well as the Township of South Frontenac for technical comments. MVCA noted the presence of a large wetland to the west and to the north of the subject property, but ultimately concluded that both the severed and retained lots were capable of having enough area to support a development envelope that'll be sufficiently separated from that wetland. As of today, we haven't received any comments from the Township of South Frontenac regarding septic suitability. That being said, planning staff did go out on the property and observed that there appears to be sufficient soil coverage in between the rock outcroppings to support a development envelope that includes a building and a septic system. In any case, planning staff are recommending a condition that will require the applicant to provide the township with favorable comments from the Township of South Frontenac. Basically saying that the septic system can be installed on both of the proposed and retained lands. There are also 2 additional conditions that have been included in this report. So the first is regarding the widening of Henderson Road to meet the required 20 meters right-of-way width that's outlined by the official plan. Right now, when we measure the PIN or the property identification number that's associated with Henderson Road, it's about 15 to 16 meters. We want to get up to 20 meters, so we're recommending a widening condition. The second revolves around the storage of recreational vehicles and compliance with the zoning bylaw. As of right now, the subject lot is not in compliance with the zoning bylaw because the bylaw only permits recreational vehicles to be stored on the property when there is a principal use. In this case, the property is vacant, so there is no principal use. So these recreational vehicles are not accessory to anything. Planning staff are recommending a condition requiring the removal of the recreational vehicles prior to the creation of the lot to ensure compliance with the zoning bylaw. All this considered, planning staff are recommending that the committee hears comments from the public and approve this application as submitted. Thank you.
I don't believe we have the applicant here. Or no. The applicant's not here, no.
I just have a question for us. The removal of the recreational vehicles and accessory structures. If the person applies for a building permit, they can then have the recreational vehicle on the property while they build. Is that right?
That's correct. So if you're looking to build a house, for example, you can live in the recreational vehicle while your house is being built, so you have a place to stay for the time being. In this case, what we observed are recreational vehicles that appear to have been on the property for quite some time, pretty weathered.
Yes, I think I know the ones you're talking about.
Anybody in the public in regard to this application have any questions on it, Cindy?
If there's anyone wishing to speak, please use the raise hand feature now. I see no one, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Did the committee members have any further questions on this? Nope. Here. Oh, wait a minute here. What we got here? Need some signatures? We got doubles here. Something missed?
I think they missed them.
You just missed them? Okay. Did you pass? Maybe Philip will get his name on the records here. Cindy, I have to admit this, that I'm really impressed by the way you can move Brent Cameron around.
Is that a good thing, Mr. Chair?
I suppose, Brent, you would have thought we didn't notice how she could move you around, so. Okay, move forward. I have a motion here, moved by, right one here, right order? Yeah, 9, okay, 9, all right. Anyway, moved by Smith, second by Smith. The consent application B1422 Kennebec Hunter for the property located on part lot 28 concession 6 in geographic township of Kennebec for a 0.81 hectare 2 acre parcel as a new lot be approved subject to the conditions noted in the planning report. And that the Secretary of Treasury shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirement of the Planning Act, including providing the notice of decision to the applicant, any person or public body that has made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed, and that all conditions outlined in the notice of decision shall be completed and the certificate of official issue within a period of 2 years after the notice of decision was issued as required by the Planning Act. Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, next item on our application, our agenda is A07 Stewart reduction. Dimitri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So permission application A0622 proposes to construct a 2-story addition with a total footprint of approximately 30.7 square meters, which equals to about 330 square feet. to an existing two-story dwelling that has a footprint of approximately 135 square meters, or about 1,450 square feet. The property proposed for development is actually located just down the road here at part lot 12 concession 1 in the geographic township of Oso, and it's municipally known as 14063 Road 38. The subject property is an existing undersized lot of record that's located between the K&P Trail to the west and Highway 38 to the east. The property is also bordered by the channel that connects the east and west basin of Charbot Lake to the north. Aside from the existing dwelling, the property is developed with a septic system and a set of stairs that descend down the slope that's located near the shoreline. The property is designated as hamlet, residential, and waterfront area in the township official plan, and it's zoned as general residential R1 under zoning bylaw number 2011-52. The property is also located adjacent to the west basin of Charbot Lake, which has been identified to be an at-capacity lake trout lake by the Ministry of Environment, Conservation, and Parks. I'm just switching my slide here. Okay, so the existing dwelling is located approximately 16 meters or 53 feet from the high water mark of the water body. And according to data that we obtained from the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, it appears that the building was constructed in 1910 prior to the current zoning bylaw coming into effect. So what this means is that the dwelling is considered to be a legal non-complying structure. Since the proposed addition will be located at the rear of the dwelling and since no other variances are required, the application is being considered under section 45(2) of the Planning Act. This means that the two questions that the committee needs to consider on this application is if the development is desirable and appropriate for the subject property, and if the application will result in any undue adverse impacts on the surrounding property or the neighborhood. The application was circulated to the Township of South Frontenac, the Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority, as well as the Ministry of Environment, Conservation, and Parks. South Frontenac staff noted that the applicant will be required to demonstrate that the proposed addition can be adequately serviced by either the existing or an upgraded system, septic system, before a building permit can be issued. Planning staff are of the opinion that the property should be able to accommodate the expansion of the septic system should one be required. If you take a look at the site plan, the septic system is located at the rear of the property. This area to the south, it looks like it's vegetated, but in fact, it's basically a maintained lawn area. There should be plenty of room to put in a good sized leaching bed should one be required. Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority stated that the expansion was reasonable and it's not anticipated to have a negative impact on the water body. It's located away from the shoreline, which is essentially meets their best practices criteria. They included standard conditions that will require the applicant to erect sediment and erosion control measures during the construction process, which is a fairly standard condition that's required on these types of applications. The Ministry of Environment, Conservation, and Parks did not provide official comments, but planning staff consulted with the ministry during the pre-consultation stage of the application. MECP basically determined that although normally development near at-capacity lakes does require an environmental impact study, given its location, the scale, and the fact that the septic system is located as far away as possible from the at-capacity water body, the EIS requirement was waived, so one was not required. As of today, we haven't received any comments from the members of the public, so all this considered, county planning staff are of the opinion that the proposed application meets the two tests under section 45(2) of the Planning Act, and therefore we are recommending approval of the application subject to the condition outlined in the staff report. Thank you.
Yeah, any comments from the applicant or the agent?
If there's anyone wishing to, I don't think the applicant is on.
He was on earlier.
He was, I don't see him on now. So the applicant's not with us.
Okay. Committee members, do you have any, the applicant's not there, so you can't ask him any questions, but we'll go down here. I'll get back to you. Is there any questions from the public in regard to this application?
So if there's any member of the public wishing to speak, please use the raise hand feature. I see no one, Mr. Chair.
Okay, committee members, any questions? Go ahead, Victor.
Sorry for being a little too forward there. This is more of a
It's a good
housekeeping question than anything. In the Mississippi Valley Conservation Area report, the square footage is 428, but in the planning report, it's 330. So there's a discrepancy there. I just want to make sure that there's not going to be any issues with that.
So the square footage was calculated based on the dimensions given to us by the applicant in the application form. I'm not quite sure how Quinte or Mississippi Valley calculated that. Could have been an error on their part, but it shouldn't be an issue.
What, you couldn't hear me? Somebody else. What? I have a motion moved by Philip, second by Fran Smith. The permission application A0622 Stewart for the property located on part lot 12, concession 1 in the geographic township of Osel for the expansion of an existing legal non-conforming structure through the construction of a two-story, 30.7 square meter, 330 square foot addition to the existing dwelling be approved subject to the conditions and reasons noted in the planning report, and that the Secretary Treasurer shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirement of the Planning Act, including providing the notice of decision to the applicant, any person or public body that made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed. Further discussion, members? Those in favor? Against, if any? Motion's carried. I think it was a time delay, wasn't it? Yeah, he did. Okay. Last item tonight's agenda is A1322 Shabalek. Is that how you pronounce that? Shabalek? Application. Jenny, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just 1 second. I will share my screen so we can all see the same thing that I'm talking about here. Okay, excellent. So this is an application for minor variance to permit construction of a new dwelling on an existing vacant lot of record. The proposal, as shown in the sketch here, is to construct a new dwelling, as said, on the vacant lot with a minimum 15-meter setback from the high water mark of Charbet Lake. And this is the non-lake trout lake side of the lake, so no further environmental studies specifically were required as part of this application. The sewage system proposed and the drilled well are both to be located greater than 30 meters from the high water mark of this property. So the sketch shown on the screen right now is the one submitted with the application. It was noted in the planning report, but I'd like to reiterate that the outline here shown is the building envelope, which is quite a bit larger than the actual building proposed. There was quite extensive discussions on that. They don't have a final building design, so this was to allow a little bit of flexibility because there's some topography challenges and other things on the property. So they had some leeway when you get out there that if they started to construct or do foundations, that if they couldn't go quite in this spot or that spot, it allowed them still to meet the requirements of the variance approval. Here on the next one, this is a sketch that planning staff prepared in conjunction with Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority. So this again is showing the hatched square here is the proposed building envelope as proposed on the application. There is a hydro line that runs through the property, approximately halfway between the lake and the road. There's a requirement of approximate 5-meter setback on either side of the hydro line. The well proposed is in this location here, which is on the lake side of the hydro line. The applicants have had well drillers out to look at the property and determine where the best location for this well is. It was determined based on the underlying water and aquifer in the region, combined with the existing location of the septic systems on both the abutting properties and their wells, that this is realistically the best or kind of only location that they would recommend for drilling a well on this property. Also shown on here is the approximate 30-meter setback from the high water mark of the lake. As I briefly noted before, there's some topography challenges on this property that make it a little more interesting for development. Where the lot leaves Shibley Road, it does slope down towards approximately where the hydro line is. There's a small ridge drop off into a cleared area, and then a steep ridge again, up closer to the shoreline that makes it some challenges with regards to what you can do and where. Here you can see on the next one, this is a shot of approximately the location of where they would like to construct the building. There's an orange stake here that represents one of the corners noted on that building envelope. So you can see it slopes up with a lower cleared area. Again, standing on top of the ridge, looking back towards Shibley Road, you can see that the driveway comes in and it's quite heavily treed in the rear. The applicants are proposing a detached garage on the opposite side of the hydro line within the that treat area, but on the backside of the ridge, even further away, in recognition of the limited development envelope any closer. Again, the septic system's proposed, you can see here. The next slide shows it a little better. So this is the area proposed for the septic system. And on the left-hand side, you can see there's a small stake here. So the circle, this is the area or approximate location proposed for the new well. So there's a bit of a ridge drop off from there into the cleared area where the most level building envelope on the property is located. I'll move on to the next. So this application was circulated for review for both conservation and septic approval. Comments from South Frontenac do indicate no objections to the application as submitted. However, there were some detailed notes included with these comments that the proposed location for the septic system is the only usable area on the property for a septic due to rocks and little soil cover and topography on the rest of the property. However, it's limited in area to about 200 square meters, which the South Frontenac noted may limit the size of the dwelling depending on the bedrooms, fixtures, and other variety of in things, and or may impact the type of system to be used. Conversations planning staff have had with the applicants are that they are intending on looking into some sort of enhanced treatment system, Elgin, other ones. There's a large number of different options out there these days, and that an enhanced treatment system in order to use this small area and sort of maximize the opportunity for development have been considered as part of their application and their thought process in this, especially to ensure that that septic system is located at least 30 meters from the lake and make sure that the impact is limited as much as possible. So they are aware of this, and this was something they had considered even before the comments from South Frontenac came in. So the Conservation Authority has visited the site twice. The first time they visited on their own with their own measurements and things. The second site visit was conducted along with township and planning staff. Planning and township staff had also conducted their own independent site visit. It was determined that with regards to some of the concerns and questions raised, that a second joint site visit would be ideal to make sure that everyone was on the same page with regards to where setbacks were, what the ridge was, what the concerns were, things like that. So Mississippi Valley Conservation had some concerns with regards to slope stability, especially with the ridge that rises up to approximately 15 meters of the high water mark of Charlotte Lake, and then drops off even more steeply on the water side from there. They had some concerns with regards to slope stability. Extensive conversations with both planning, township staff, conservation staff, and the applicants determined that if they wanted to build into or on top of the ridge in any substantial way, Further slope measurements and a slope stability study would be required to ensure that that construction wouldn't destabilize anything and increase runoff into the lake or cause concerns like that. As a result of all of these discussions, Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority were agreeable, and we do have email correspondence. Again, we don't have formal written comments, but there was an extensive amount of email correspondence that if you guys wish to review is good. And they said that in the absence of a sort of a survey, sketch, site plan, and slope study, they would be looking for an absolute minimum water body setback of 20 meters for the main building itself, and an absolute minimum water body setback of 15 meters, and or minimum top of slope setback of 6 meters, whichever's greater, for any attached decks or patio. So essentially, this will place the construction of the main building up to the toe of the slope on the non-water side of that ridge. And the intention is the applicants have confirmed with their builder, looking at designs, they're looking at a more creative design where they have maybe the driveway comes in, they have sort of a limited garage on the main level and some storage built right up to that, and then have a second floor that kind of goes out over it. But the intent is to meet all of the concerns of the Conservation Authority, and there'll be no excavation into the ridge. There'll be no alterations to the rock within that. And they are agreeable to meeting all of these requirements and having it so that it's, you kind of walk, it's like a reverse walkout. A lot of we have, you walk a basement walkout. This is going to be a basement with a top level walkout, and they're going to have only limited, maybe some wood decking or patio or things, and very limited construction on top of that ridge, and kind of work with the topography of the ground and the property to work with the conservation requirements. And one of the concerns they had, I mean, it's a waterfront property. They want to be able to see it. In theory, they could build entirely outside, but then you're looking at the ridge and your neighbor's rear doors, which kind of defeats the point of a waterfront property. I understand. And so we worked with them to meet expectations of, having a view and maximizing your development while trying to ensure we have conservation comments and environmental concerns addressed as well. So they're very agreeable and have worked quite extensively to make sure that the building design works with the topography and they meet the requirements of the Conservation Authority, as well as looking into, again, smaller areas for septic and recognizing that the increased, or I guess advanced treatment system is more ideal for this property given the limited area, and that way they can ensure the maximum setback for the septic as well. As a result of all of these conversations, comments, and agreements, planning staff are recommending that the Committee of Adjustment hear any comments from the public today, and subject to those, approve this application with the comments in the staff planning report. That's it. I can keep going if you'd like.
Are there any comments from the applicant or?
If the applicant wishes to
agent?
speak, can you use the raise hand feature? Okay, just a moment, I'll move you over. Okay, go ahead.
I just want to thank you very much. Send thanks to the staff because we recognize how difficult the process might be and how restrictive it is, and we actually appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody in the public that have any comments on this?
There's nobody else virtually online.
No? No? Committee members, do you have any questions on this? Go ahead, Francis.
I just have a logistical question. All of the different setbacks and the way the building is going to be set up, is that communicated to the building department or is that controlled through Quinty? Like, how will they know about all of these conditions?
That's an excellent question. One of the requirements for and included recommended conditions is that all of this information, the required setbacks that are detailed here in the minor variance, any drawings that have been submitted as part of this approval process, along with the decision of the committee, are provided to the building department in conjunction with their building permit application. So that way the CBO is fully aware of what goes where and how that's all to be addressed.
Okay, any other questions? Remember, then I'll read the motion. Moved by Victor, second by Sherry, that minor variance application A1322 Chavalik on the property located on part lot 9, concession 2 in the geographic township of Oso to reduce the front yard water body setback to 20 meters in order to construct a dwelling with a maximum footprint of 176.5 square meters, 1,900 square feet, including the attached decks. The minimum setback to any uncovered and unenclosed attached deck shall be 15 meters from the high water mark of Sharp Lake and 6 meters from the top of the ridge, whichever is greater. Be approved subject to the conditions and reasons noted in the planning report, and the Secretary Treasurer will issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirement of the Planning Act, including providing the notice of decision to the applicant or any person or public body that made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed. Further discussion of any? All in favor of the motion? The motion's carried. And Brent will have to sign the decision make here at some point.
I just read it. I'll just write it in, print it in.
Okay.
We did it previously that way when it was.
All right. Is there anything else to come before the committee tonight? Okay, Francis, sorry.
I have a request. Because of our setup, what you put up on the screen is excellent, but I can't see it. Can you send that to us even the day of so that we could have it in front of us for those that are blind like me?
Absolutely. We will endeavor to have that in advance. These, unfortunately, today were completed about 20 minutes before we started, so I hadn't got an opportunity to send them, but yes, absolutely, we can do that for you guys.
I think it would be just easier for us to follow. Like, yeah. Brent is further ahead on Zoom because he gets it in front of him than we are. We're going through the planning report instead of having the shortened version.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be.
I also have a dual screen, which is a big one. So I've got everything blown up into a very large portion. That's why I keep looking this way.
And you're probably in your house pants as well and comfortable.
No, I'm being professional right now, fully clothed.
Okay, I have nothing else to come before us tonight. Then I have a motion moved by Smith and second by Juan that this meeting be adjourned to 4 p.m. August the 11th, 2022, virtually and in person, Oso Hall, 1107 Garrett Street, Sharbert Lake. Anybody not voting for this? All in favor? Motion's carried.